Read the documents that actually plan the missions to Mars, NASA's 2024 architecture, SpaceX's roadmap, and you'll notice a word that has quietly disappeared. The word is return. It used to be exploration. Now it's sustained presence, settlement, self-sustaining city. Nobody announced the change. Somewhere in the last decade, the people planning these missions stopped describing Mars as somewhere you go and come back from. The reason is not the rocket. The reason is in your skeleton. Pull up any list of why a crewed Mars mission is hard. 3 names will be on it, in some order, every time. Radiation, life support, isolation. Start with radiation, because the numbers are real, and they look frightening. A Mars round trip exposes a crew to galactic cosmic rays during the long transit, and to a thinner atmospheric shield once on the surface. NASA's Curiosity rover carried an instrument called RAD that measured both, directly. In transit, the dose is 1.84 millisieverts per day, give or take 0.3. On the Martian surface, 0.64 per day. Add it up across a full mission profile, and you land somewhere between 870 and 1200 millisieverts. Total, round trip. The current NASA career limit under the 2021 standard is 600 millisieverts. One number applied to every astronaut, regardless of age or sex. On paper, this is a deal breaker. In practice, it is a known number with known options. Active magnetic shielding, hydrogenous water wall shielding, burying the surface habitat under Martian regolith. None of these are solved engineering. All of them are tractable engineering. The dose is a number with a name, and the mitigations are a number with a name. Radiation is hard. Radiation is bounded. 3 barriers, 1 down. The second barrier is the one that sinks most science fiction missions in the first act. A 3-year crewed mission cannot be resupplied. Every gram of water, oxygen, and food has to either fly with the crew or be recycled out of what the crew already has. Closing a biological loop with 100% efficiency is thermodynamically impossible. Every percentage point you fail to recover, you have to carry. At 90% recovery, the launch mass is unworkable, so how close has anyone actually gotten? In 2023, the International Space Station crossed 98% closed-loop water recovery. The water processor assembly, the urine processor assembly, the brine processor assembly. 3 machines, in series, turning crew waste back into drinking water at an efficiency that, 10 years ago, was considered aspirational. Christopher Brown of NASA Johnson called it, and this is the quote, a pretty awesome achievement. Plant growth chambers are slowly closing the food and oxygen loops in parallel. Veggie, the Advanced Plant Habitat, the European Space Agency's Melissa project. 98% water closure is not a hope. It is a measured operational reality in orbit today. 2 down, both genuinely hard, both with credible engineering paths. The third barrier is the one everybody focuses on for the movie version. A Mars crew is locked inside a metal can with the same handful of faces for roughly 30 months. The communication delay with Earth runs up to 22 minutes one way. Real-time conversation does not exist. Real-time telemedicine does not exist. If something goes wrong, the doctor on Earth finds out about it 22 minutes after it happens, and the crew hears the response 22 minutes after that. The story we tell ourselves is that this is the part no rocket can fix. The honest answer is that this is the part with deep operational data. 65 years of Antarctic winter-over experience at McMurdo, at Concordia, at Vostok. The Mars 500 study, 520 days of full-duration mission analog, sealed crew, simulated comm delay. HICs. Serious. Out of that literature emerges a recognized, characterized coping pattern. The researchers call it psychological hibernation, a documented withdrawal and stabilization response in long-duration extreme isolation crews. Third quarter syndrome is now a textbook entry. The barrier is real. It is also bounded, measurable, and routinely managed. 3 barriers, 3 credible answers. So why does this video exist? Pull up that list again. Radiation, life support, isolation. Those three names will be on it, in some order, every time. Now look closely at the list. There is one barrier that is almost never on it, and it is the only one we have no measured human data for. 3 down, 1 to go, and the fourth one is different. The fourth barrier is gravity itself, not zero gravity. We have a lot of zero gravity data. 6 decades of orbital missions, including the year-long flight of Scott Kelly. Not Earth gravity. We have a lot of Earth gravity data. We are sitting in it. The gravity we don't have data for is Mars gravity, 0.38 g. The longest a human being has ever spent in partial gravity at all was about 75 hours on the surface of the Moon during Apollo 17. Past that point, every single number any agency has ever used to plan a Mars surface stay has been an extrapolation, from 0g downward, or from 1g downward, never measured, never observed. 3 barriers we have studied. 1 barrier we have not. Start with what we do know. Scott Kelly spent 340 days on the International Space Station. Across his mission, his left ventricular mass dropped at an average of 0.74 grams per week. By the end, his heart had shrunk by roughly 25 to 27%. He did this despite performing a rigorous in-flight exercise regimen on orbit, 6 days a week, on the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, and on the Colbert treadmill. The mechanism is not exotic. On Earth, your heart spends every second of every day pumping blood against gravity, up a roughly 1-meter hydrostatic column from your feet to your skull. In space, that column vanishes. The heart, like every muscle in the body, adapts to the workload it actually has. In 0g, that workload is much less. The next finding cuts against intuition. The fittest astronauts shrink the most. An endurance-trained left ventricle is built for an aggressive hydrostatic column. Remove the column, and the adaptation cuts deepest exactly where the prior conditioning ran deepest. That is the heart. The signal in the literature is loud, and the follow-up data goes back decades. But the clearest signal, with a long record, is in the skeleton. In 2022, Gabel and her team at the University of Calgary published a tracking study of 17 long-duration astronauts. They used high-resolution scanning of the tibia, the weight-bearing shin bone, from before flight to 12 months after return. 12 months on the ground, after landing. The group median tibia failure load was still down 1.3%. Total bone mineral density still down 1.4%. Trabecular bone mineral density, the spongy internal scaffolding, still down 2.1%. And 9 of the 17 astronauts had not recovered tibial bone density at all. The researchers split the cohort by mission length. Astronauts who had flown longer than 6 months showed a failure load deficit of nearly 4% at a year on the ground. The shorter missions came in at less than 0.5%. Quote from Gabel: "Sustained losses represent at least a decade of normal age-related bone loss, potentially advancing onset of osteoporosis." End quote. That is the measured reality of a 6-month flight, tracked 12 months later, on Earth, at 1G, with full medical support. And what makes that number darker isn't the loss itself. It's what we now know about whether the bone ever comes back. In December of 2024, in the journal Science Advances, the same group, this time led by Walle, published a follow-up. They went back to the Gabel cohort, but they tracked the bone at a finer resolution, not just total density, individual resorption sites, the actual physical locations where bone had been removed in flight. The question was simple. After return to Earth, when and where does new bone actually get laid down? Of the new bone formed at sites that had been resorbed in flight, 31.8% appeared in the first 6 months after return. In months 6 through 12, 2.7%. The window collapsed. The author's word for what happens past month 6 is arrested. The sites stop accepting new bone. Quote from Walle and colleagues: "There is a window for spatial recovery of disuse-induced bone resorption that is constrained to the first 6 months after reloading." End quote. That phrase deserves a second pass. Constrained to the first 6 months. Not slower after, not delayed past. Constrained. Outside of that window, in the literature's word, the site is arrested. It is no longer responding to the strain signal it would have responded to on day one. Bone is not like muscle. A muscle rested for a month comes back. We know this. Bone is a living spring. Osteocytes embedded in mineral matrix, sensing strain, signaling where to lay material down and where to take it away. Remove the strain signal long enough and the spring is not slackened. It is dismantled. Reloading the body at 1G does not automatically reassemble the strut geometry that resorption disconnected. The Walle finding is the spring snapping at the weld, not bending. 31.8 in the first 6 months, 2.7 after. That is the headline. That is the curve the longer mission is climbing the wrong end of. Everything we just said is data from zero gravity. The number we actually care about for Mars is 0.38. And we have never measured a human body at 0.38 gravity for more than 75 hours. In 1987, Harold Frost proposed a model of bone remodeling called the mechanostat, and it is still the prevailing framework today. Bone mass is regulated by mechanical strain. Loads above an upper threshold trigger osteoblasts to lay down material. Loads below a lower threshold trigger osteoclasts to take it away. The model predicts threshold behavior, not graded response. Above the line, the bone holds. Below it, the bone goes. The only direct partial gravity bone cell datum the literature offers comes from Casaniga and colleagues in 2022. They exposed an osteoblast cell line to simulated Mars gravity using a random positioning machine. The result? A dose-dependent impairment of bone cell function. Suppressed, not absent. Important caveat. That is a study at the cellular level, not whole organism, not human. Which leaves the central question of human Mars planning sitting in the open. Whether 0.38 G sits above or below the mechanostat threshold for bone preservation in the adult human body is a consequential number nobody has ever measured. Models predict, the literature suggests, the mechanism implies, and then the data runs out. Laurence Vico at the French Research Institute INSERM has described continuous gravitational acceleration as a central evolutionary stimulus for terrestrial life. Every species on this planet, including ours, was tuned by 4 billion years of 1G. There is no organism we can look at to tell us what 0.38 does to a body over 30 months. There is no direct analog. There is only theory, and the long pause between the theory and the first measured Mars surface crew that will test it. Benjamin Levine, at the University of Texas Southwestern, is the lead researcher on the cardiac atrophy data. He has said publicly, and this is the quote, "The heart adapts relatively well." That same researcher, in the same body of work, is the source of a harder finding. Scott Kelly's heart shrank by 27% in a single year. The fittest astronauts shrink the hardest. The moment of cardiovascular risk is not steady state in space, but the transition back to 1G. Both readings are real. The steady state in space is, in fact, an adaptation. The transition back is the moment of risk. The literature is not internally inconsistent, it is unfinished. Which brings us to what actually happens on the trip back. Earth atmospheric re-entry on a ballistic or lifting trajectory delivers 4 to 5G of sustained deceleration. That is the geometry of the planet, not a design choice. You cannot land softer without staying longer in the atmosphere, and staying longer means burning hotter. An astronaut at peak physical conditioning experiences 4 to 5G as severe. An astronaut returning from 18 to 30 months at 0.38 G experiences it with a heart roughly 25% smaller than it was at launch. Trabecular bone microarchitecture with disconnected internal struts. Calf muscle volume reduced by about 13%, peak power down by about 32%, even with the full in-flight exercise protocol. And a NASA-documented 83% incidence of post-flight orthostatic intolerance in long-duration crews. Standing up makes them faint. Think about a bedridden grandparent, 6 weeks immobilized in a hospital. Full risk on standing. Now imagine asking that body to absorb 4 to 5G of deceleration without warning, in a sealed capsule. A fractured hip is a 1G problem you survive in a hospital. Orthostatic collapse during 4 to 5G of re-entry deceleration is a 1-minute problem you may not survive. Astronauts come back from the International Space Station to a 45-day, multi-phase rehabilitation program. It is run by NASA's astronaut strength, conditioning, and rehabilitation specialists. That program assumes the astronaut is already on the ground in a hospital with a full medical infrastructure surrounding them. It is the reason astronauts come home from a year on the station and are walking at the press conference within weeks. A Mars crew arrives at the moment of maximum cardiovascular load before any of that infrastructure is reachable. The 4 to 5G is delivered first. The rehab, if it happens at all, happens after the survival event. There is no field hospital on splashdown. The current pharmacological frontier, bisphosphonates, sclerostin antibodies, mechanostat targeting agents, slows bone demolition. It does not rebuild disconnected struts. Drugs slow the rate of resorption. They do not reassemble a building that has already been taken apart. Which forces a question that nobody planning these missions wants to answer out loud. Go back to the documents. NASA's 2024 Moon to Mars Architecture Update talks about, quote, sustained human robotic presence. SpaceX, in Elon Musk's May 2025 roadmap, talks about a self-sustaining city of 1 million people. It gives a settlement horizon of 2055, with crewed landings projected for 2029 to 2031. The word exploration, with its implicit round trip, has been quietly replaced. The new words are presence, settlement, city. Nobody made the announcement. Somewhere in the last decade, the institutions that fund and plan these missions stopped describing Mars as somewhere people go and come back from. In medical ethics, the standard for sending a human into a dangerous procedure is informed consent. The person knows the risk well enough to agree to it. The complication for Mars is that we do not yet know the risk. We do not know whether 0.38 G sits above or below the mechanostat threshold. We do not know whether a heart adapted to 0.38 can sustain a 1G hydrostatic column after 30 months. We do not know whether the bone resorption recovery window closes the same way at partial gravity as it does at zero. You cannot consent to a return trip outcome that depends on a number nobody has measured. Mars is one way, not because of the rocket. The rocket is the bounded part. Mars is one way because the human body, after long enough at 0.38 gravity, may no longer recognize Earth. That is either a brutally honest framing for modern spaceflight, or it is the polite word for exile. The data we have right now cannot tell us which. There is one more way to think about it, and the immunology field offers the metaphor. A transplanted organ has to be matched, suppressed, watched, because the host body recognizes what does not belong and acts on it. The hard question for a 30-month Mars crew is whether the body becomes the transplant. Whether, after enough time at 0.38, the host planet does not. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.